Good morning, good evening, good whatever it is, wherever you may be. This is Nikki Acosta. I am your co-host for today's episode of Cloud Unfiltered. And I've got my awesome co-host with me, Val. Say hi, Val.
Hello.
And one of my favorite guests of all time, and I say this because we've done this thing before, Stu Miniman of SiliconANGLE, Wikibon. What else? I'm missing one. The Cube. So, Stu, I'm so excited to have you on because you kind of do this thing for a living. And, short of having any dogs running in the room and barking, which might be a problem for both of us, you are always incredibly insightful. So let's start off by telling people about you and what you do, because there may be some people who maybe don't know who you are.
Thanks, Nikki, and thanks so much for having me. Great to be on a podcast with you again. And yeah, as you said, I do way more video than I ever really thought that I would. So I work for SiliconANGLE Media, which is the umbrella company for a couple of different companies. So I joined when it was Wikibon. So Wikibon is a research and analyst firm. It's a 10-year-old company. I joined them just actually 7 years and a week or two ago. So we're research focused on cloud, big data, IoT, and good old infrastructure, because that's my background. I'm an infrastructure guy. I lived on the vendor side for most of my career. Most recently, before I joined Wikibon, I was at EMC. I worked for Lucent behind there. So I've got a strong networking background, and that led to a lot of this cloud stuff. And right around the time I joined Wikibon, we started doing this side project called The Cube, which is a live video program. We're the worldwide leader in live video coverage for tech. And so I am at way more conferences than I ever thought I would be. So, everything from the big shows like Amazon reInvent and VMworld, Dell EMC World, down to smaller shows where we talk about things like the AI and, various pieces of the infrastructure stack. And as a co-host, I've interviewed, hundreds and hundreds of people. Nikki, you've been on the program. Happy to have you in the Cube alumni. And, love talking to startups and practitioners, as well as, when we do get the big name executives, thought leaders in the industry.
What is it like going from sort of the vendor side to kind of taking outside in view? You were at EMC for a while.
Yeah, I spent 10 years at EMC actually, and from 2000 to 2010, you say inside the company, and especially a big company like EMC, now even bigger now that they've been gobbled up by Dell. I was in engineering for a bunch of years. I was in the CTO office for my last 3 years, and I thought that I had a good view of the market landscape. You said we're a big player. Lots of companies like to talk to us. I cover, a broad spectrum of things. And when I left, it was like, oh my gosh, it felt like kind of, the blinders were open up, and not blinders that were blinding us, but keeping you focused on everything that attached and had to deal with EMC. And now there's this big wide world with startups you've never heard of, people at the periphery that you never ran across, and it's just such a really, really big world out there. And with my analyst hat on, as well as doing the Cube, you get inundated from all angles and all technologies that people are like, oh, we want to tell you about this or come on your program. So it's really opened my eyes a bunch to see just how more diverse the world was than even I thought, working for a big player.
Well, why do you think that is? You think it's just like tribal kind of groupthink, like it's just the function of how people operate, or do you think it's like inherent parts of culture to where older companies have different habits than newer companies?
Yeah, I mean, even when I was inside the company, from when I was in engineering to when I took a more of a strategic role, working in the CTO office. When I'm in engineering, I'm worried about, what I have to do this week, what we have to deliver this month, maybe this quarter. When I worked in the CTO office, you're looking out, working with partners, looking out at technologies, but just you've got so many things that you need to work on, and there are people that can get to you and people that feel that they're never going to be able to reach you. I mean, I worked at corporate headquarters. I had been a field person in a previous job, and corporate life sometimes can be a little bit of a black box. So it's just how much bandwidth I had. how many people can get to you. And, I started doing some of the social media stuff, my last few years at EMC, which opened my view a little bit. But when you're out on the outside, especially as a quote, independent, analyst, it's everybody wants to try to, teach you something, think maybe you can help connect them to their audience, and see what can be done there. And Nikki, just as expected, my dog walked by in the background.
I just had my husband come and grab mine. I was on because mine were barking. So good times. Never a dull moment on Cloud Unfiltered, where the dogs are unfiltered even. So what are some of the cooler things that you've been hearing about? I mean, obviously there's a lot of like you said, a lot of last week or earlier this week, last week, obviously the big news Friday was Whole Foods and Amazon, and we were talking pre-show about just like the gravity of what that means. Like, what do you think that means for the grocery industry?
Yeah, I mean, look, I am by no means no expert on the grocery industry, but it's funny. Here's where I'll try to connect it and see if this resonates. In the cloud world, we've been talking about, there's this hybrid thing and this multi thing, and I said, well, hey, Nikki, are you a hybrid shopper or a multi location shopper? Because we all stop at the convenience store, we'll go to a regular grocery store. We all have our stacks of boxes from Amazon, sitting there. And just like that in the cloud world, customers, we all have our SaaS applications. Most people have their own data centers. I work for a really small company. We don't have our own data center. Sure, do we have a couple of, servers here and there sitting under a desk. But for the most part, we use cloud services in the public cloud as well as SaaS. So, boy, Whole Foods, my mind was just spinning thinking about it, because you take just some of the basic things. Okay, Amazon now has the bookstores, and they were thinking about this new grocery shopping. Well, they can really accelerate that plan by going to Whole Foods. They are going to have locations closer to all of us now. And while I don't think that they're going to have a room in the back, that they're going to have all the books and all the other things we're going to, get from Amazon, there is that closer connection to the customer, where you can get, probably be able to check out some of their electronics. Maybe there'll be some delivery options for household items. When you see the stats of, Amazon's one of the largest, diaper companies in the country, as well as I think they are now the #1 battery supplier. So Amazon Basics, all those things, they are the line I've used for Amazon for the last 3 years is they are scary good, because in the IT world we've seen just the disruption that they've been having, and you look at just, there is no segment of the market that they might not touch. As Jeff Bezos says, #1, it's always day one. There will be no day two. We're going to keep driving. And #2, if there's margin out there, he's got resources to try to just go streamline it and take advantage of that.
Go ahead.
I would say, what stops them? How can this plan possibly backfire? What could be bad about their rapid pace of innovation and stuff like that? Do you see anything stopping them, or anything coming in to cause a lot of issues for them?
Well, so the strength of Amazon is they've got lots of different plays. So, grocery, this could be, who knows if this is going to work. People could get up in arms. The people that like Whole Foods say, I'm going to stop buying from them, and I'm going to do all my shopping at Trader Joe's. So, each individual market, but Amazon, they've got a lot of resources. They're okay with going in. I mean, remember they created a phone and it was a total flop and nobody liked it. So they're not going to win every single time in every single market, but they have the resources. But to be honest, they are very pointed with their investments. I mean, the $13.7 billion investment in Whole Foods, definitely is wow. That's why I don't think anybody was oh yeah, this is exactly what we expected Jeff Bezos to do. But
no.
He's aggressive. He's gonna. He does the rocket stuff to try to get into that market. There's so many different areas.
Newspapers, everything.
Yeah.
Drone
delivery. Washington Post. I mean, right. It got in drone delivery. I mean, Nikki, how exciting would it be? It was okay, Nikki, kids and juggling all this stuff and everything. how far is the Whole Foods away, and when can I start getting my drone delivery so that I just say, Alexa, add this to my cart, and when I get a certain amount of things, they're going to have a box just land in my backyard, and I've got everything. So it sounds pretty cool to me.
I'm waiting for it. I mean, I use some delivery services, but I've noticed a pretty large disparity in pricing when you go to a store versus ordering through a grocery delivery app. The pricing is so different. You don't get the specials. You don't get to pick your own produce. Like, there's still something great about, going to the grocery store. I just happen to do it on the least busiest times that I can, which is usually a Tuesday. Tuesday night is a great time to go to the grocery store.
Yeah, absolutely. But if I'm in the grocery, industry, I'm a little worried. Heck, if I'm a delivery company like FedEx or UPS, I'm really worried about where Amazon's going. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hey, so Stu, another question. So this is the exciting stuff that's happening in the private cloud space. Well, I guess it's not private cloud; it's just Amazon doing its thing, right? But what's exciting you right now in the private cloud space? Like, what's exciting to you there? Like, is it the Kubernetes or the multi-cloud, the hybrid cloud? Like, what's interesting to you right now?
Yeah, I think that's a great point because, right, the public cloud, obviously, just the growth is phenomenal. Amazon can't help but be impressed. When I'm asked what conference to go to, the number one on my list is Come to reInvent. Now, there were 35,000 people there last year. There's probably going to be like 50,000 last year. So I'll be doing the Cube there. I love it. The community is phenomenal. Microsoft's doing a great job. Google's really interested. But when it comes to, right, that private piece, when we've talked about hybrid and multi-cloud, we actually wrote at Wikibon about 2 years ago, we wrote a new category, what we called True Private Cloud. And the reason we called it True Private Cloud is because what we were calling private cloud before was really virtualization. It was like virtualization plus. At the OpenStack conference, they were like, that was version 1 of cloud. We said that wasn't cloud. It's kind of BS. How do we really get the automation? And when I want to look at the data and I want to look at the applications, how do I make something that really is hybrid or multi-cloud? And yeah, exactly as you said, things like Kubernetes is pretty exciting to be able to make that real. I was at the Red Hat Summit earlier this year. They made a partnership with Amazon to be able to take OpenShift, the Kubernetes type solution, and take the stuff that I have in my own data center and be able to have access to the services that are available in the public cloud. So that's really exciting because, people are worried about lock-in when it comes to cloud. What services am I going to have available? And things like Kubernetes and just containers in general allow me, hopefully, to have some independence between where I write something and where it can go. I was actually at the Cloud Foundry Summit last week talking about a lot of similar things. So, how do I take my application and give it a little bit more ability and flexibility?
So Stu, there's, put your analyst hat on for a second. There's people that are, I'll put it this way. We had a customer who talked about looking at the market kind of like the Goldilocks zone, and you've got, companies, and he had like a particular date. Companies before this date are kind of old school, and companies after this date are new school. I think the date was like 2010 or something. And he said, now what we're starting to see is that's this Goldilocks zone where even smaller companies are going to need, traditional infrastructure for some things, and traditional infrastructure users are going to need cloud for some things. And so everyone's kind of like meeting in the middle. Do you see that happening? Like I see it happening with some folks, but it doesn't seem as ubiquitous as I thought it would have been by now.
Yeah, so I tend to we need to look at your applications and look at that in a spectrum. So I've got my new apps, and if I'm the born in the cloud native type solution, that I'm embracing microservices. I know what I'm doing with it. Where I build them and how I build them and scale. Lots of those are in the public cloud, but we see some of the really big companies out there that like, oh well, they were on Amazon and they switched to Google, or they were on Amazon and they brought it back to their data center and then they went back to another public cloud provider. So that, how I build and where I build it is something that we can look at. But the problem we have for most companies is I don't just have the cool new applications. I've got hundreds or thousands of applications. And that's where things like Kubernetes and Cloud Foundry can really give me a platform so that I can take my new apps as well as some of my older apps, get them on this environment and give them really flexibility where I can take my applications and have a little bit of distance between that and the infrastructure. So that's the goal. I mean, Nikki, you probably remember we used to talk about PaaS all the time. Was the future of what cloud was going to be. We feel most people don't talk about PaaS anymore, but that platform term comes in here, and that is I have my applications live there, and some of them I'm just going to migrate over. Some of them I'm going to start pulling apart and refactoring, and some I'm going to build brand new. So that's the lens I tend to look at things. And you're right that this is a tough that some applications and some infrastructure I can really define really easily and say, oh, this fits. Really short-lived, need to be able to change very rapidly. It's probably going to live in public cloud versus, oh, okay, I really understand this. I need to, minimize the cost and maximize the utility I have. It's probably something I would live in my data center, but there's lots of stuff that sits in the middle that it depends. And strategies are changing. When I talk to, most practitioners today and you say, what is your cloud strategy? The ink is still drying on it and they're still sorting out all the details.
Is that surprising to you? I mean, it seems like for folks that have been, involved in cloud for a long time, it almost seemed like, cloud was a no-brainer. Like there were just so many advantages. Like, why hasn't it moved faster? And who's buying it? Is it lines of business? Is it IT? Is that the problem? Is that you've got all these people who've been responsible for all these disparate pieces and different silos that are now being forced to come together?
Well, if IT was easy, we wouldn't need so many of us, I guess. But right, I mean, the problem is that IT is very fragmented. Everything tends to be additive. I talked to plenty of companies that are still doing lots of mainframe. They've got mainframe. They're running Docker and things like that in the mainframe environment. So thing I worry about, like my applications, something I've been kind of railing on the last few years is think back to the early days of virtualization. One of the earliest use cases that I heard was you had an application where it's running like Windows NT. Windows NT was going end of life. Oh, and the server, let's just say it was like a DL380. That was going into support. So what do I do with this old application? Oh, I got to rewrite it. Oh, that's going to be horrible. So let me stick it in a VM and I can make it live for another 5 years. The problem is that application already sucked and your users already hated it. So you're going to take that and run it even longer. Every company you talk to, it's like, hey, how's your time card? Yeah, how's your time card solution? How's your
expense solution?
How old are these things? Oh, well, it's mobile now. It's great. So, right, we need to look at applications specifically. Hold on. I got to take care of my barking dog here.
Yeah, no worries. He's on mute. That's great. I've got for those of you who can't see, I had to pick mine up and put it in my lap because he was whining at my feet. This is Darlin Marlin. He's made a cameo before. For those of you who are just listening and can't see him, he is a cockapoo and he is my golden child. I'm not gonna lie. People always say that they don't have favorites. I have a favorite dog and it's this one.
It's beautiful.
I have a big neurotic dog who sheds a lot, and I always wear black, and he is white. And I've got a little yappy Chihuahua Terrier mutt, and then I've got Marlin. And the designer breeds are worth it. He was not cheap. He was like a lot of money, like four digits. But he's totally worth it. He doesn't shed, which is great too. And he looks like he should. He looks like Fozzie or like an Ewok. Waka waka waka.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. So one question I always like to ask, and it's a question that I've asked to guests, and I may have asked you this before, but when you think about disruption,
yep.
What is it that is going to fuel disruption? Is it technology or is it culture? Or if it's both? What's the breakdown?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, Nikki, and when we argue, I talk to other analysts. We look at ourselves and say, okay, things are moving much faster than they were before. So therefore, if I don't start doing the next thing, chances are my competition's going to do it, and therefore competitive pressures are going to need to make me change. That being said, inside most enterprises, it's not one person or one group. It's, it tends to be, I have this one application and I have to run it this way, and I run the business on it. So, there are some companies that are just going to get forced. They're either going to get put out of business, or they're going to have something horrific that is going to need to make them change. If you read the Phoenix Project by Gene Kim, it's a great example of, okay, the board comes, we're going to have to lay off people because, we're not moving fast enough. So we know if you're not moving at a certain pace and your competition is, things are just going to shift. When I look at our business, we've been doing theCUBE now for, since 2010. So a number of years. We keep investing in our technology. We keep adding more pieces. We've got, a whole software team developing tooling to help us understand and leverage what we're doing. The whole, artificial intelligence, AI and machine learning. AI has been talked about for, I think it's, order of magnitude 100 and 150 years. So these aren't new things, but the tools we have available, the access to more services, what cloud really gives us, one of the things that cloud gives us is the access to, if I needed to spin up, thousands of cores in an instance, I could. You just log into your account and you go and do it. So the access to do things that before only the biggest companies with millions of dollars of budgets and years, to bring that down much faster. It was something when we did our first, review of big data, 4 or 5 years ago, it was taking those really big things that only certain companies could do and driving it down market and speeding it up. And AI, one of the big things about that is we have all this information out there that we have access to and are out in the general public, and how do I make use of that? How do I take advantage of that?
Or how do you thwart the nefarious use of that, which is I posted something on my Twitter the other day. I was looking at I saw an article about the president's Twitter followers, and some people who've been studying his Twitter followers, and of course they're fake. And look, you and I know, we both know people that pay for followers. I'm not one of them, but we both know people who do that, right? Yeah. And there was another article that I saw that I jumped off from that one, and it was fake news as a service. Yeah. And there were it showed these basically these apartments that had gotten busted by the government in the Asian countries that were click farms. And so they had a wall, literally a wall of phones, and they confiscated thousands of SIM cards. And basically it was the job of these people to go and just click on things and review things to get them pulled up, and so they could trick the algorithms into getting their product to stick to the top. So that's crazy. There was another guy who was writing about, this is an NPR story this week, a guy who studies Google search trends. And he said, man, you can learn a lot more about areas of the country and people's habits, because, Google is where you go to express your deepest, darkest desires, fears. It may not be something you have a conversation with somebody about, but he found out there's a lot of women going online, and the scariest thing he found was the number of searches for abortions, and he could pinpoint where these things are happening, which is just a fascinating case study of the human psyche that I don't think we've ever had before. Yeah,
I mean, Nikki, don't we know? Google, Amazon, and the NSA know everything about us.
Everything.
Yeah. But you bring up the whole fake news type discussion. I had one of the hosts we have for theCUBE, a woman, Rebecca Knight, who writes for Harvard Business Review, actually. And she turns to me during one of the interviews. She's like, Stu, how do you know what information to trust and believe? And it was well, that's a really good point. My joke is, first of all, as an analyst, anything that a vendor tells me about their product obviously is a lie, right? Anything you tell me about your competitor, I might believe a sliver of truth of that. But, all of us is, I used to love reading the existentialist stuff when I was in high school and even beyond. So, exactly. So, one of my favorite books, of course, love 1984, but Brave New World.
My favorite book!
My absolute favorite. And unfortunately, I think we live there, because it says in there, anything you are told like 100 times, just kind of embeds itself in there. My kids, you ever pull out of the driveway without your seatbelt on? They start screaming.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, you can't drive without that. And you're like, well, I remember when I was a kid, there were no seatbelts in the back of the car or anything like that. So just that the things as to what we believe and why we believe it is, something that's really interesting. Scares me a little bit when somebody, even when I was like writing white papers, when I worked on the vendor side through being an analyst, it's, you think about, understanding and directing thought. I mean, come on, Nikki, the clouderati. We made everybody think that there was only one true cloud and it was the public cloud or something like that. But it is to think about, what becomes, kind of truth. Exactly.
Yeah. It's amazing to see how flexible the truth has become.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me too, when I went to the first DockerCon, and I just started thinking, there's all these companies here, and it seemed like all you really needed was a cute logo and a tagline or something, and you were legit, like you were a really good company. And I mean, what was the truth of what those companies actually offered and stuff?
Well, Val, the first DockerCon, the one, like, I listened to like Facebook and Yahoo and Google talk about how they're using containers, and it blew my mind. But you're right. When you dig in and you're like some of the other companies there as to what was real and what they had there, it was just like, oh, hey, we have the cool new thing and everybody's hopping on it. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you know which company is worth researching and covering and stuff? And
Wikibon.
Wait.
Well, that's what I'm asking you too.
We're none of the three of us live in Silicon Valley, so obviously we don't have the truth. Because in Silicon Valley, right? If the VCs funded it, it must be real.
Right.
So.
Oh, of course, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Unicorns, rainbows, hooray! Hey, man, there's a lot of money in it, and I get why why people do it. I mean, good night. You don't really need that much intellectual property. It seems like.
But you need a really cool logo.
Yeah,
a mascot.
What's interesting is I look a lot of these acquisitions, and of course, being involved in OpenStack, I've had a lot of friends that have been acquired. And it seems like a really interesting thing that happens because, in a lot of ways, it's like the culture and the processes and the tools and the sort of empowerment that allows these companies to move fast. But when you get absorbed into a larger company, you now have to sort of assimilate to the rules and the processes. And so it's one thing to buy a company for technology, but I think people are falling short and not realizing that it's not just the technology that's making that company well differentiated and disruptive. It's the culture that comes along with it. And I see people throwing technology at problems all the time. They say this technology problem or this technology solution will solve your problem. But most of the time, I don't really think that the problems are technology driven. I mean, sure, there's a speed factor that comes along with that. I think in a lot of ways, the reasons why, a lot of large companies can't move fast is culture. Their cultures are just not well suited for innovation as they should be.
Yeah,
I imagine it gets harder as the companies get larger.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been lots of research done on just the corporate structures. The typical corporate structure really is patterned after what the military did. Once again, quite a long time ago, and command and control, filtering things up, making decisions.
Silos.
Absolutely. I every once in a while, I'll go to these conferences really focused on innovation, and I had the opportunity to talk to Dan Pink. So if you haven't read his book, Drive is phenomenal. He's done quite a few books to, why we, what gets us engaged, what helps us move forward. Everybody looked at models like, Google's 20% time to say, oh, can we innovate by spending time on that? And at the end of the day, when I talked to him, I said, so can big companies innovate? And he's like, really, no. Big companies can't innovate. Can people innovate? Can they buy innovative things and therefore accelerate them or deliver them? Sure. But in general, no. Big companies have the way that they do things. Their sales force is incented a certain way. Moving it is really challenging. And I don't know if I'm 100% bought in. I was at the conference I was at last week. I was talking to, 100-year-old financial and insurance companies that are trying to transform themselves into software companies. You know, you look at companies, you know, anybody like, you know, Nike or GE or, you know, Wells Fargo, you know, there's lots of companies that are doing pretty cool things, but, you know, at the IT side, but it is really challenging to change this thing. Changing culture is really difficult. And Nikki, as you point out, it's not just, you know, oh, cool, throw some, you know, great new tool on top of it and everything's going to be wonderful.
No, just
You got to get your people
just
moving.
get Kubernetes running on your site. You'll be fine. You're good.
Yeah.
That's all
You'll
you
be
need.
Come on,
fine.
blockchain.
Yeah, you just need a blockchain. That's the problem.
Hyperledger, I think, will be the answer for all industry loads.
Serverless, bro.
Oh.
AI is going to make it program itself.
Yeah.
So Stu, I got to ask you too. So you've interviewed like hundreds, maybe thousands of people and stuff. I mean,
Yep.
Any big takeaways? Maybe some of the more interesting interviews you've done, like what's impressed you about all these people you've talked, like maybe some commonalities that some of these people have, or I don't know, just something interesting about, you know, being able to talk with so many people. I just love any insight you have with that, because I mean, it's cool. You get to talk to.
Who's fun to party with, Stu?
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Come on, Nikki. I mean, the OpenStack crew for years was always fun before all the money dried up. But yeah, Val, I mean, from an interviews, you know, I love talking to some of the practitioners, the ones that are doing cool things. You know, I've interviewed some really good, you know, young people that have, you know, driven their careers and are helping, you know, really, you know, change inside. You love. I interviewed a guy that works at a service provider, and he's like 30 years old, and he's like the CTO already. And he's been with the company for like 8 years, and just talk about his career path and where he goes. You know, I've been on the podcast, The Geek Whisperers. You know, good friends of mine, and you know, yeah, Nikki knows them well. So you know, shout out to those folks. And you know, where you can take your career and people that can learn from what you're doing is always really interesting. So, you know, Val, commonalities is, you know, the ability to, you know, fight against some of that status quo out there, be able to articulate clearly, you know, vision for where the company needs to go and help delivering it. I mean, it's tough to do. The inertia of most companies is so tough to fight against.
Yeah.
How do you do it? How do you fight against it? What's the magic pill? What are the magic pills?
Get out. So
take the money and run.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I think what you do is you go to 99 Designs, you find a really cool logo, you tell a good story, Val says, and you know, we can
there you go.
From there, you know, you can go start up your own company, and you know, eventually you'll be big enough that you'll be slow. Yes,
there you go. So look, I think you know, I see with time and technology that that things are going to get better. You know, the old CEO at Rackspace and my old crazy boss, the guy whose idea was, or OpenStack was his idea, Jim Curry and Lana Napier, are now they have a new firm, and they're investing in companies that are people-centric. And these aren't like get in, get out fast. They're really focusing on people. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And in a time where people are focused on automation technologies and all this other stuff, like really, what are those automation technologies, you know, geared at? What are these new apps geared at? And they're ultimately geared at making the customer experience better for whatever it is that you sell or do. I think to some degree they're onto something, because I think people at some point are just going to go back to valuing the human connection. And we see it with, you know, through social media. You know, it's great to like keep up with your friends on you know, Twitter and Facebook and all that, but there's nothing like, you know, being in a room hanging out with your friends. Or
no, Nikki, the robots are going to take all our jobs, and we're going to be out of work real soon. So,
well,
you know,
if that robot can clean my house, sign me up.
They've got lots of robots that can clean your house.
I want a robot that does laundry and cleans my house.
I thought I saw one that it's pretty expensive, but not only does it wash your laundry, but it might even start folding it. It takes.
I saw that too.
I was like, pretty awesome.
That's pretty genius.
Yeah, I tell you, we do so many events. We did a couple of years ago, we did an event with Andy McAfee and Eric Bonjolfsson, who wrote The Second Machine Age. So they're with the MIT Sloan School, so pretty smart guys. And they really pitch that we need to be able to race with the machines. So how do we make sure that, all of these robots, don't take away all our jobs and make it so that we're going to have, a few that have lots of money and everybody else is going to be in trouble. Actually, they say it's really the fat middle of the marketplace that is really in trouble. The middle class could be wiped out. And actually, they've got a new book coming out next week I'm excited about. I think it's like platforms and robots and things like that. So
no way. And that who was that? Who were the authors again?
Andy McAfee and Eric Brynjolfsson. So I'll send you the link. You can put it in the liner notes if you want.
I would love that. I would love to have them on too. I love talking to people like that.
Yeah.
So we're running out of time. I know you've got something coming up at the hour. Tell us about your new studio. This is so cool. I'm so excited for you.
Thanks, Nikki. So we are, we've got our Massachusetts-based office. I'm actually working remote today, but in Marlborough, Mass, we have a small studio, but in Palo Alto, California, so right in the heart of Silicon Valley where all the wonderful money and ideas is happening, we've got a brand new 4,500 square foot studio right off of East Charleston Street. It's on Commercial Street. So John Furrier's there. He does like a weekly show where he talks to Valley people.
Valley people.
Yeah, so it's a lot of John always loves the VCs or people that used to do that. So he calls it Silicon Valley Friday. So I was out there last week. I loved it. We're building it out. So we've got, access to lots of bandwidth. It's got a green screen. We actually did a product launch for one of our clients there and leveraging that studio more. So while we do the Cube at, about 100 events a year, we can leverage that studio too. So like instead of going to Barcelona for Mobile World Congress, we do 2 days of coverage from our studio thanks to some of our sponsors. So looking to leverage that more. And we'll still be flying all over the place to go to lots of shows, but can do way more in our studio too.
One last question for those of us who are on camera frequently. What do you use to prevent shine?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So here at home, it's just make sure you don't have the fluorescence overhead. But we've started to use our production people. I usually have like a little bit of powder or that like matte gel stuff because I need the anti-shine awful. I just managed to get some nice soft lighting in this room, so I'm not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got the shine going all over here. You're doing good, Stu.
Thank you.
You are doing good. Well, Stu, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's always a pleasure. I can't wait to have you back on our show again. Where are you going to be over the next few months?
So, I've got the big one that I think a lot of people will be at will be VMworld. I've actually, Nikki, believe it or not, I haven't been in Vegas yet this year. I was so excited. I've been out to San Francisco a bunch of times. I've been basically everywhere that JetBlue flies direct in the U.S. from Boston. I feel like I've been there. But VMworld and Amazon reInvent are the 2 biggest shows. If you go to thecube.net, you can actually find most of our events that we'll be at, and of course hit me up on Twitter if people want to get in touch with me sooner.
Best Twitter name ever, @Stu, STU.
Super simple.
That's it. Super simple. So thank you so much for joining us, Stu. Tomorrow, folks, we're doing this back to back because we had a reschedule, but tomorrow we've got James Waters from Cloud Foundry, Pivotal Cloud Foundry. So I'm really excited.
James is awesome. I interviewed him last week.
Yeah. What should I ask him? Anything I should ask him about?
Let me see. Impending IPO. No, he can't answer that. But
dang, you tried.
Absolutely. But he'll definitely pick up on some of those discussions, platforms that we talked about. That's core to their mission. The thing that's interesting. Talk about those young new companies versus big, legacy companies, if you will. Most of his clients tend to be those big financials.
Yes.
Those big older companies. So aren't they all dead? I mean, they're all going to get, Netflixed and Airbnb'd out of the world.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Stu. Thank you, Val. Folks, don't forget to follow us, subscribe on SoundCloud, iTunes. If you like it, hit like. If you like the format, if you don't like the format, leave a comment. Let us know. Is it too long? Is it too short? Tell us who we should have on the show. I wish I could have a million Stews because it's always fun, but that's not possible. So write us a line, drop us a line, follow us at Cisco Cloud, and we will see you tomorrow. Everyone say bye.
See you later.
Bye.